Welcome to the Robcast. This is a show about Oakville, the people that live, work, and do business here. I'm honored with our guest here today. This is our member of Provincial Parliament, Stephen Crawford. You're not going to want to miss this.
It's the Robcast Podcast. He's with you for the next hour or 20 minutes. Who knows? Let's see how it goes.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Fraser Associates of RBC Private Banking.
Here he is. It's Rob Raham.
Stephen, thank you so much for making the time today.
My pleasure. Thanks. It's great to be here, Rob.
I appreciate that. So let's kind of dive into it. You know, as a child growing up, were there aspirations of a political career? Like, where did you kind of start when you were getting your high school? Did you kind of start to go down that road? It's an interesting kind of education you've had. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. And I did have an interest in public service at a very young age, actually. As a 11 or 12-year-old. Actually, I got interested in politics and government, Rob, by actually delivering the Toronto Star.
Okay.
So that was my first job, back when kids actually delivered newspapers.
Kids, that was their first job, right?
Yeah. I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And, the newspapers would be delivered. They'd be in my garage. I'd be putting the different sections together, and I'd read it. And I would try to understand, and I got very interested in politics and government in the world. And it wasn't as if my parents were really involved in any way. I mean, they had an interest, but they were no more than anybody else. They weren't involved or anything. But I took an interest to it. I really cared about our country, our community, and the rest is history.
So you kind of went through high school, and I believe you went to Western, so you kind of pursued the initial political career, right, with political science?
Well, I did take political science at Western. Yep. After I graduated, I went into the business world, though.
That's right.
I did not go into politics, and I wasn't really that involved in sort of political circles for quite a few years. I was very focused in the private sector. Yeah,
and as a kind of a financial advisor, you work with some pretty prevalent companies, O'Leary and different ones. Was there a switch that changed? You said, well, I want to get back into the politics side. Was there something that happened within that career of yours at that time?
Yeah, I think there was actually. I'd had success with two companies I was involved with, Acuity Funds being the first and O'Leary Funds being the second one. And at that point, that was 2016, we had sold the O'Leary Funds, and I had just started taking a step back as to what I'm going to do next in my life. And at that stage, I have 4 kids, and I really care a lot about the country, as I say, and its future. And at that point, I decided I think my next move is to serve the people.
Okay.
And the rest is history. So I got involved with the PC party here in Oakville and won the nomination in 2017 and won the election in 2018.
That's right. Now, were you living, when you were doing your financial, were a lot of gentlemen or women are living in Toronto, being close to the scene? Were you living in Oakville at the time and starting the family while you were still pursuing the financial career?
Yeah. So I lived in Oakville at that time. I moved to Oakville in 2009.
Okay.
2008, 2009, around that time frame. I grew up in Mississauga, Clarkson, Lorne Park area. I went to Lorne Park High School.
Yep.
So
Classic.
I always aspired to live in Oakville, even as a young man. Oakville's such a great community.
Yeah. And in terms of the process of the nomination, like, explain to that, like, do you just kind of put your hand up? I mean, is it Terrence Young, the one that you kind of...
I didn't run against him. He was the federal MP and provincial before. Okay. But that's actually a very good question. In some ways, it's actually tougher than a general election, because in a nomination, there's a number of candidates in the political party that are vying to be the candidate of choice to run in the election. And at that time, I hadn't been that involved locally in politics. Like I say, I was focused on my career and my family. So throwing my hat in, I really had to get to know a lot of people quick, get them signed up as party members, and then come out to the nomination meeting, which was in June 2017, to make sure they supported me in that nomination process, which in the end I did get. But it was a lot of hard work, a lot.
So is it just within Oakville, the Conservative Party, the nominations within that group? Like, how many people are voting on a situation like that?
In a situation like that, I think there was probably about 1,000 people that voted, give or take. There was 3 candidates at the time running.
Registered members of the...
You have to sign them up to be members of the PC party, and then they have to actually come out to vote. So there was about 1,000.
And so it was 2018 when you got brought in. Is that when the Doug Ford, is that the same time when you came in as well? So now you kind of, well, where do you start in that role? Do you meet Doug and you go down and they decide where they're going to allocate you within the House? Or
That's basically it.
Yeah.
I didn't know Premier Ford really very well at that time. He became leader just before the election, if you remember going back in time.
Yes.
Interesting times. But so he became the leader, and I got to know him a little bit through the election, obviously. And at that point, I was appointed chair of the Finance Committee. I guess just given my financial background, that made sense at the time. And that was in June of 2018.
Okay. And now, I'm not sure when you got the place on Rebecca, on the frontage there, but, that's obviously a place to set up or where you can potentially be available. Do people walk in and voice concerns? And I mean, just as your role, are you the voice of Oakville kind of provincially? Is that kind of what, as people would look at for your role here in Oakville?
I think that's a fair comment. And yeah, we've been in that location shortly after I got elected in 2018. And I wanted to be in central Oakville, so we had good transit access. It's a great location. Kerr Village is an amazing area. We're close to downtown Oakville. Good to transit facilities, the buses and even the Go Transit. Yep. So people, they will come in from time to time into our office to talk about issues, and we're always open there and, able and willing to speak to people. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, I think, I appreciate you kind of giving me up to where we are to now. Obviously, there's a lot that's happened over the last few months. I'd love to hear your opinion, just kind of a little bit about the Ford plant. This has been, I have a number of friends that work there, and, there was a big announcement a number of years ago, switching kind of the EV. Just where are we at with it today, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so Ford is a critical part of the community. You're a long-term Oakville resident, so you know how important they are to our community. They've been here since, I believe it's 1957. Right. So they are a really important employer in town here, and we value them very much. I can tell you, when we were first elected in 2018, Ford of Canada was on the edge of leaving Canada. The regulations, the cost of doing business, the cost of hydro. There's a number of reasons why they were very concerned about doing business in Canada and Ontario. We made some changes, and we worked collaboratively with the federal government to incent Ford to stay and actually build more vehicles here. Yep. So back in, I believe it was 2021 or 2022, we made an agreement with them that they would stay here in Oakville, and they were going to build electric vehicles. Now, times have changed, where you probably saw the announcement back in the spring of this year that they are no longer going to build electric vehicles in the short term here in Oakville.
Called it a shift or a pivot, right?
Yeah. So they've pivoted. Basically, electric vehicle sales, the trend over the long term is much higher. We're going electric, and that's great. But in the short term, in the next 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years, I think sales for electric vehicles are probably a little lower than they expected, so they're going to pivot
especially
to make
in the US, right?
Especially in the US, which is the big market. Yeah. So they're going to make the F-150s right here in Oakville in the next year, and then eventually pivot to make electric vehicles. But in the meantime, they're going to be making 100,000 vehicles here. They have 2 plants where they make them right now in the States.
Right.
I believe it's Kentucky and Ohio.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they'll be adding the 3rd plant in Ontario here to make the F-150s right here, which is great.
Are they closing one of the plants in the States, or is it just added on?
I believe it's added on. The demand is that high.
High.
Yeah. And again, they will shift to electric, which is great, and we all want to go that way. But in the meantime, if we can employ people right here and make the vehicles that people want in the short term, great. It's a win-win. It's a win for Ford. It's a win for Oakville. It's a win for the workers.
So, I mean, part of that with the Ford plant was there was a pretty substantial grant that was given to them. So, did they kind of hold on to that with future presidents?
Yeah, nothing is given to them until they're building. So and some of it's tax credits and whatnot.
It's just a business making business decisions at this point. But once they go down the EV road, that's where these things kick in. Got it. Okay. So leading on from that, just this past June, there was a shift and kind of a shuffle in Doug Ford's cabinet there. So, and your role has now changed. Do you mind kind of telling us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. So I was delighted to be appointed to cabinet. So I'm the Associate Minister of Mines, and prior to that, I was the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Finance. So I was basically working with the Minister of Finance. So in the new role, number one, I'm at the cabinet table, and number two, I'm working very intently on the mining sector in Ontario, which is absolutely critical. And there may be no mines in Oakville, obviously.
I was going to say, right? Are you bringing more of your financial kind of expertise towards the northern Ontario?
Exactly. And it's a critical part of Ontario and Canada's economy is the mining space, especially with the critical minerals that we need for electric vehicles. And actually, quite frankly, there's a lot of mining executives and mining people that actually live in Oakville. So we obviously don't have any mines here, but it's a critical part of even the local economy.
So is the Conservative government kind of looking towards opening up opportunities? Are they investing in the north to bring some of these mines to fruition?
Absolutely. And it's everything. I mean, commodity prices are higher in some cases. So, for example, gold. I was up last week at Equinox Gold's new mine opening up near Geraldton, Ontario, and that's creating a lot of local jobs, hundreds for local residents. That's good news. The commodity price is doing well, but also critical minerals, graphite, lithium. We have an abundance of critical minerals here in Ontario. Not a lot of people know the magnitude of what we have in Ontario. And our goal as a government is to ensure that we get out the minerals out of the ground in a clean, environmentally friendly way, process them here, and lead right to the manufacturing sector, because we've got the electrical vehicle manufacturers here.
Right.
The electric batteries are going to be in Ontario over the next decade. So we can be a one-stop shop right here in Ontario. And finally, I might add, the United States has a particular interest in this for national security reasons. A lot of these minerals are really needed by the U.S. Armed Forces for national security, because a lot of them right now, quite frankly, are controlled by China and Russia.
Right.
So we need access to our critical minerals. It's going to provide safety and security. It's going to provide for the electric vehicles and the batteries, but also prosperity for the North, for the Indigenous communities, for the Northern communities. I think this is a fantastic way to build that wealth and prosperity for the North that they so need.
What you were just saying, I was just, it sounds like, right now our batteries are the lithium's being, pulled out of the ground in South America, wherever it is or Africa, and it's sent out to China. And so part of I think some of the pushback of EV cars is people are looking at, well, it's not Canadian made. It's like, and the process is high to get things back and forth. So it looks like we're focusing on trying to be making our own lithium EV batteries here.
Absolutely. And other commodities like nickel, for example. So a lot of electric vehicles right now go to Indonesia to get nickel. Well, Indonesia has horrible environmental record. Terrible.
Yeah, human rights.
Ripping up rainforests, human rights. It's all financed by the Chinese, where we have the ability to produce much more environmentally friendly, safer nickel right here in Ontario.
It's fascinating that that's the movement that we're moving towards. And I'm not sure if just because we are more in the South that we are not as aware of it, or maybe people aren't reading the newspapers as much anymore. Is this public news that this is the kind of agenda of the progressive conservative group?
Yeah, I think so. We've made it a clear, and I think my appointment in that role is an indication of the government's their interest in this space, because it's something we really are focused on.
So being the associate, to who's the person up in Northern Ontario that are you linked with someone up there?
George Peary is the minister, and he's got a background. He was president of Placer Dome, has a fantastic mining background, and it represents the riding of Timmins.
Well, fantastic. So let me change gears just for a second here. You're a father, you live in Oakville. I'm a father, I live in Oakville. We've got kids. I mean, there's a couple things. We're going into the school year. We're starting the school year, and there's been a change, an adjustment by your government that said out of sight, out of mind. You want to kind of walk me through how that came to be? And this is obviously the no cell phones in class.
Yeah.
And it's different between different ages, I think up to grade 6, and then it changes from the grades above. How did that kind of come to be, and why did you think that your government think that was such an important thing to implement?
Well, our government thought that was critical because kids need to learn and they need to be focused when they're learning. And clearly it was a distraction. And we had seen this throughout the province in different levels of education, that it was a problem.
Yeah.
If kids are bringing cell phones in, they're not focused. Listen, adults we could probably do that.
Probably learn from that too.
Maybe we can make a few changes in there for us too. But starting with the kids, I think, is critical. And I think allowing them access when they need it, a cell phone, because sometimes they do, in the class makes sense. But having them at their side all the time, texting and whatnot during class, they're not going to learn properly.
Right. Now, was this a hard thing to push through? Was there pushback from parents being, I want my child available, emergency situations?
No. I think there was overwhelming support for bringing this through. I mean, we're talking overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no doubt it's become a challenge of just keeping our kids focused. And I think you're right. We as adults could be probably focusing a little bit more, putting the phone down.
Yeah, we could all
dinner time, no phones at the table.
Definitely.
When you have those real conversations.
Definitely.
Right? So again, keeping the hat of the MPP off, being a longtime Oakville, what's special to you about Oakville? What really do you hold special in your heart as a community in Oakville?
Well, Oakville has been rated, as you know, Rob, I'm sure, several times as the best community in Canada to live in. So I am so fortunate to represent this community in the legislature. I mean, it's a fantastic community. So whether it's our beautiful parks, whether it's a Glen Abbey golf course, which has hosted the Canadian Open, whether it's our downtown Oakville, which is incredibly beautiful, our parks, and our people.
Yeah.
The people make our community. And we have a lot of very, very involved people in our community, involved in charities, involved in the community. So it's a special community.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you kind of rose to points. You talked about Glen Abbey. We've had some challenges with the LCBO, the green space. I mean, it seems like there's a constant kind of where there's this desperate need for more housing, and then there's this pushback, especially from Oakville, that we don't necessarily want that. And I think it kind of moves me towards the Housing Accelerator Fund. And maybe some people know about this at home or not, but the government of Ontario kind of said we're going to kind of help to finance, multiplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and just more housing starts. And I think, just recently Oakville kind of started to go down that road, and then they pulled out, and they were the first kind of community to kind of pull out of that program. Did you, being kind of the person for Oakville, was that a challenge for you, or what did you think about that situation?
Well, the Housing Accelerator Fund that was a federal program.
Okay.
So I can't speak too specific about that. What I can say is provincially, we have the Building Faster Fund, which is funding communities, so maybe somewhat similar to that, not exactly the same program, but I know Oakville is on target this year to meet their targets for building, so there'll be additional funds for Oakville once that's gone through the system, so that's great for the community. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to build housing.
Right.
We have a crisis of epic proportions in not only our community, not only even our province, but our country. When you have 1 million people come to the country in 18 months, you have to build a lot of homes. We don't control immigration. That's the federal government. That's another story. That's another story. But but what we do have some say in here is trying to get the homes built in our communities and encouraging municipal governments to do that as well, because clearly we need to build a lot of homes quick.
Right.
This is a very serious issue.
Do you think obviously anyone that lives in Oakville, especially in your position, know about Midtown, and some of the initial proposal was what most people thought was crazy. Is that the answer? Do you think is that GO train corridor of super high density, super high rise? Is that the answer for this solution, do you think?
It's part of the answer.
Okay.
We do need to build around transit facilities. The GO station in Oakville is the second busiest station in the entire GO network. It's actually busiest after Union Station. So it's a busy station. A lot of people use it. We do need to build more intensification of housing around the GO station for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's close to public transit, which is number one, but it reduces the environmental footprint. You have the density, the potential there to build. So we do need to build there. Some people don't want to see any building. I understand that. But the reality is we need to.
Yeah.
We have to build, and we need to build quick, and we need to intensify, because people of Oakville have said, look, we don't want fourplexes in our residential neighborhoods.
They've spoken up.
We don't want Glen Abbey, bulldozed and condos built there. We want green space, and I agree with all that.
Yeah.
So we do need to put people somewhere, and that means we need to intensify around transit. And I think most people are supportive of that. How it's actually rolled out, we'll leave to the town of Oakville and the mayor and the councillors to decide exactly how it's going to be laid out. But we do need to intensify around transit.
I think the challenge, and just being selfish, living in Oakville, is that where that Oakville GO train is, and that Trafalgar is already a traffic nightmare. If people say if you're south of the QBW trying to go north, you don't want to be south of the especially down by that area. So again, as a resident, is there concerns that the traffic flow and the infrastructure won't be able to handle this type of growth, especially in an already... No,
that's a fair point. The community, the town of Oakville and the region of Halton are well aware of that.
Yeah.
And there are proposals in there to change highway interchanges and to make additional, roads and also transit hubs for example, Oakville Transit. So that's definitely an issue as you grow. Yeah. The town and the region will have to plan for that along with the province.
Yeah. So to kind of follow up with that, I mean, the relationship, do you have a relationship with Mayor Burton? Is it kind of, are you speaking, is it just about certain issues? Do you kind of come in, or does he have questions? Like, what's that relationship between you and Mayor Burton?
Yeah, it's important that we collaborate, municipal and regional government. So Gary Carr, who's the regional chair, Mayor Burton is of course, the mayor, and local councillors, and my federal colleague as well. We all have to collaborate on certain issues because all governments need to interact. And the better they interact, the better it is for community. So definitely I will talk to them on a fairly regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'll switch gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the kind of our healthcare system, and we've got this beautiful new hospital, but we're still challenged with beds and space. Now, you started a new program just recently with a great grant. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that program that you're running?
Yeah, so listen, that's another big issue in the province is healthcare. Let's be quite frank. Again, when you have 1 million people come into a province in 18 months, you need a lot of doctors, you need a lot of nurses, and the population's aging. So clearly, healthcare is a big issue. It was a huge issue when we got elected, and then of course COVID happened. So what do we need to do on that front? We need to have more doctors, we need to have more nurses, we need to have more hospitals, we need to speed up times that drugs are getting approved. Premier Ford has led the way with the premiers and to lobby the federal government to get quicker approval on the drug process for drugs that may have been approved in the United States, but they're not approved in Canada. That's key. Also, we certainly encourage the physicians and the nurses to be able to speed up foreign credentialing. If people are coming from countries that have fairly good recognized medical systems, we need to speed up the process here so that doctors and nurses and support staff can work in the system quicker. And of course, building more beds, having those funded. We've had record spending in healthcare since our government's been elected. So there's been a massive investment, but a massive investment is needed, and it's going to continue to be needed. So that's an area that we have to continue to work on, but we're making progress.
I remember in years past, there's been some talk of kind of the hybrid system of semi-privatizing. Is that still something that's being in consideration? If we can take some of the weight off of the public, part of our healthcare system? Is that still something that's talked about? Is that kind of off to the side for now? That
would be something at the federal level with the Canada Health Act. So we as a province don't have jurisdiction over that.
Right. So tell me about
as I say, we're focused on what we can do right now, which is delivering great publicly funded healthcare.
How can Oakville and the people here get more involved in their voicing their opinions to you? I mean, obviously it's important that you hear what we have to say. Is there something you could kind of reach out to the people that are listening and say, like, how we can help in your movements forward?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, the Oakville residents are great because they are, and I've heard this from other MPPs, by the way, that they are the most engaged residents in the entire province.
Engaged, would you say opinionated or just engaged?
Engaged.
Okay, engaged is the word we're using.
I think everybody's got an opinion, but they actually move from just an opinion, sitting on a couch, to actually
they get things done.
Right,
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Writing an email, talking to the MPP.
Yeah.
So they are very engaged. So I think just keep doing what they're doing. I mean, for example, the Glen Abbey, we had thousands of emails in on that, and people were ecstatic when our government was able to preserve Glen Abbey for future generations, being home to so many Canadian Opens and a great green space. So Oakville residents are engaged. I encourage them to send emails or reach out to our office anytime.
Yeah. Are you expecting to kind of continue down this road? Would you be up for re-election and wanting to continue with your position?
Yeah, definitely. I thoroughly enjoy. It's an honor to serve the people of Oakville.
Is there a future do you see ahead of maybe moving up the chain, or are you comfortable being where you are now and maybe time will tell?
I'm comfortable being where I am right now.
Yeah. Stephen, in speaking with a lot of people, prevalent people in political positions, the BIA and things in Oakville, the challenge that they're trying to face is bringing that sense of community back into Oakville. Yeah. And obviously that's important to you. What are some of the things you're trying to do that you see the importance of community as well? That's
absolutely critical. And we've have great events. Like we've got the Canada Day down in Bronte. We have the Christmas parade, Santa Claus parade, and usually in late November, early December. There's Kerrfest. Get out and come to Kerrfest. That's coming up very soon. That's a great event right in the Kerr Village, right by my office. And we actually, speaking of community events, we have our community event as the MPP in Oakville on September 21st. So it's a free event. to all the Oakville residents, 12 till 2 p.m. at Glen Ashton Park.
Okay, great.
I'll be there, and there'll be bouncy castle, face painting for the kids. It's a great community event, so I would certainly encourage everybody to come out to that, yourself included. Yeah.
I guess, we do this every show. It's called the Robcast Rapid Ask, and we're just going to ask you a couple, get a little bit to know you personally here, right? So, the first one we say is, you're not going to like the first question, but you're on death row. You've got one last meal. No one else is with you. What's on that plate?
Boy. Yeah, that's not a question I thought about too often.
You weren't ready for that one.
But
favorite meal, favorite food?
I truly enjoy a lot of different foods, and I'm open to anything. Yeah. And I don't eat a nice filet mignon steak very often, but I guess I would have to say that.
The filet mignon.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with it and kind of pick their mind, dead or alive, who would that person be?
Have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, it would probably be one of my ancestors. In fact, this summer, I took my family to England and Ireland. My kids had never been there, so it was great. And my older girls are 18, the younger ones are 14. So it was at an age where they could appreciate it. Went to England, where my family was from, but also to Dublin, Ireland, where my paternal side, so that's the Crawford side of the family, originated from. And we went to see the house where they lived.
Okay.
And I would absolutely love to go back in time and be able to speak to my great-great-great-grandfather who, made the decision to come to Canada.
Interesting.
Yeah,
and
lived in Dublin. Yeah,
You've had a successful day. We're at Queen's Park. You're driving down the Gardiner. Obviously, not too fast. Is there a group of music that you would be popping into the thing? Or are you more of a kind of a 680 News guy? Is there a song or a group that you'd love to hear on a good day?
Well, that's another good question. Your questions are good. I do listen to both the news.
Yes.
I always listen to the news on the way into work if I'm not on the phone talking to somebody, not hands-free, of course. It's Bluetooth. Mm-hmm. On the way home, I will tend to listen a bit more to music, and I'll listen to satellite, oftentimes 80s, 90s music. But my musical tastes are varied, too. Like, I love everything from jazz to rock. I mean, concerts I've been to in my lifetime, I've been to the U2, I've been to the Rolling Stones, Coldplay. It's a real mix of music.
My own here, yeah.
Yeah, and the one music that I've gotten into in the last couple of years, which I wasn't into before, is country music a bit more.
That the one grows on you. My brother's going down the road. He's trying to get me into it. I'm still on the fence a little bit. There's a couple new bands that I kind of enjoy, but I'm not all in on the country.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely getting more into it, like Chris Stapleton and some good musicians. Yeah. And I enjoy listening to some good Canadian music too, Gordon Lightfoot, and so a really good mix of music.
I'll leave you. This is the last one I was going to ask you. What is something that most people wouldn't know about you?
Wouldn't know about me? Well, perhaps that, or maybe they do know, but maybe they don't know. I'm the father of 2 sets of identical twins, and don't ask me how that happened, because I have no idea.
House full of girls.
House full of girls. So 2 sets of identical twins, and all 4 of them are competitive athletes.
So you're going in 4 different directions.
It's been very busy. Now, the older girls now are in university. Okay. I just dropped them off in mid-August. They're both in the U.S. One's in Virginia and one's in Ohio, and they're doing equestrian.
Wow.
So they're equestrians, and the 2 younger girls are part of the Oakville Gymnastics Club.
Oh.
And they have their dream to go in the Olympics. Yeah, that's exactly it, yeah.
Well, Stephen, listen, I really appreciate you making the time today, and please stay tuned for another episode of the Robcast.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Fraser Associates of RBC Private Banking.